Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us for tonight's DC Plug Initiative Feeder 15001 Open House meeting. My name is Peyton Manning from Tina Boyd & Associates, and my team and I are providing additional outreach support on this project. The purpose of this evening's meeting is to provide a brief overview of the DC Plug Initiative and an update on the current design activity for the feeder. This project is located in Ward 4 in the 16th Street Heights and Crestwood neighborhoods. The primary focus of the project will be the undergrounding of overhead power lines in order to increase the resiliency in the area. In the meeting, we also hope to address any questions and concerns you may have about the design and upcoming construction. First, I'd like to introduce the team that will be presenting today. From Pepco, we have the Regional President, Ms. Donna Cooper, Project Manager, Yamani Kadani, and Project Management Consultant, Ray Shakwari. We have the Design Consultant, Brent Showalter, and from DDOT, we have Mr. Keith Fox. Keith Fox and Yamani will be leading this evening's meeting. However, before I hand it over to them, I would like to make you aware of this excuse me. Wow. I would like to make you aware that this meeting will be recorded so we can accurately capture your comments and concerns. The team will start by doing a presentation. Everyone's mic except the presenter will be muted during the presentation to avoid any background noise. If you have any questions throughout the meeting, we would ask that you leave it in the question and answer section at the bottom right of your screen. And we will address all questions at the end of the meeting. To open up the presentation, I'll be sharing a brief video with you which highlights the DC Plug Initiatives process and undergrounding these power lines.
The District of Columbia has experienced more violent storms in recent years, resulting in extensive power outages. For this reason, the District and Pepco are working to reduce power outages by moving many of the overhead power lines underground to improve the infrastructure and enhance resiliency. Neighborhoods affected by construction will be notified well in advance of the project start date. This will include the posting of no parking signs. Construction will begin with the coordination of streets and sidewalks impacted in your neighborhood. Signs will be posted, and flaggers will direct vehicles and pedestrians around construction crews. Before any digging begins, other existing utility lines that may be in the path of construction will be carefully identified and marked in the field. In some cases, small plants, trees, and grass will need to be removed from public spaces to allow for digging and placement of new underground equipment. But we will do our best to retain as much vegetation as possible. Any public property disturbed by this work will be restored to its original condition. Construction workers will use asphalt saws to cut the pavement. A backhoe will dig a trench for the placement of the distribution line. Periodically along the main primary line, manholes and tap holes will be required to house equipment and to provide access for inspections and repairs. The backhoe will also be utilized in these cases to excavate for these structures. In order to meet jurisdictional safety requirements, shoring will be provided in the trench to ensure stability. Pepco uses either fiberglass or plastic PVC conduit to protect underground power lines. Concrete will be poured into the trench to encase and secure the conduit, and steel plates will be placed over the trench temporarily to make the road usable to vehicle traffic. After the concrete is set, the steel plates will be removed and the trench will be repaved in sections. Transformers, switches, and other ancillary equipment will be set in place. Equipment such as transformers and switches will be installed either in the roadway or the sidewalk, depending on space availability. Underground cable will be installed. Landscaping will be restored as needed and roads paved. Overhead primary electric wires will be removed from poles, but secondary service and communication lines will remain. Finally, the new underground power lines will be energized. While electricity will remain on throughout the project, there will be a short scheduled outage needed to switch from the overhead lines to the new underground system. We appreciate your patience while the District and Pepco improve the future of electrical service for the District of Columbia residents.
And that's just a brief overview of the project. I'll now pass it on to Donna Cooper to begin the presentation.
Thank you very much, Peyton. First of all, I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for being a part of tonight's engagement to discuss the DC Powerline Undergrounding Initiative. I just wanted to provide just a little bit of historical context and really just to share with you our excitement that this project is moving forward. This project goes back several years. It was initiated in 2012 after the derecho that we experienced. That was a very significant storm event that many of you may recall resulted in multi-day outages for customers within this region, as well as further north, as well as west. It was interesting because during that time, we were involved in a major plan, which was defined as Pepco's Reliability Enhancement Plan. But I really put when I look at it, I think about the magnitude of that particular weather event, and it was analogous almost to a hurricane that was on land because it really toppled our trees. It brought down our power lines. It brought down our infrastructure. And regardless of all of the efforts that we were taking to fortify as well as enhance the system, it resulted in that infrastructure being impacted. Over the years, there had been a lot of reviews that were conducted regarding undergrounding power lines, and there were a lot of variables in that equation in assessing undergrounding the power lines in the District of Columbia. But one of the points that I do want to make is that when you look at the District of Columbia, we do have a significant portion of our power lines that are underground, but that's largely within the downtown footprint. If you look at wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, the vast majority of our infrastructure is really overhead, and we're supplying power from an overhead infrastructure. So the focus after the derecho was how can we make this infrastructure more resilient to the effects of more significant weather events. Because with climate change, it wasn't a question of whether or not we would be susceptible to more weather events. It was a matter of when. Well, a task force came together after that was called by Mayor Vincent Gray. That task force consisted of a wide range of very key and critical stakeholders. The Public Service Commission, the Office of the People's Counsel. It was chaired by the city administrator at that time, as well as the CEO of our corporation, co-chaired that body. You had participation from community members, key departments within the District of Columbia government. Other utilities were at the table. And we worked collectively for right about a year to really assess and analyze what actions we could take to engage in ensuring that we had a more resilient grid and moving towards undergrounding our power lines. Certain key factors were critical, which was definitely affordability, looking at ensuring that we were focused on resiliency of the system, looking at prior weather events and looking at during those particular events on our system, which were more susceptible to being impacted by the events. So there was a methodology that was developed and looking at our feeders and which feeders were performing what I would say much more susceptible to having outages during events. And so looking at a way to chart and tier which particular feeders should be underground. But before we got to that place through the analysis, is that once we came up with a plan to move forward with undergrounding as well as a methodology for selecting feeders, it had to be operationalized, which required that this plan had to go to the council in the form of legislation. And it went to the council on two separate occasions. It went in 2014, and it was approved unanimously by the council. There were various legal questions regarding certain aspects of the legislation. In 2017, it was signed and revised by Mayor Muriel Bowser and was approved. And that's the plan that we have in place now that is ultimately being implemented. This is a multi-year plan. It is a $500 million plan, and it is focused on undergrounding the wires in wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. And that's the primary lines. Well, the commission approved our first biennial plan, and we kicked off the implementation of our first feeder. We have many more that are in the queue now, going through engineering as well as design. And so we're very excited because we're moving this major project forward that will bring significant benefits to the residents of the District of Columbia. We're doing it in partnership with the District of Columbia, with the Department of Transportation, and something that is critical with this particular project as well, which is a part of what we're doing on this evening. When you are engaging in infrastructure upgrades, it does impact communities. So it is going to have an impact. We want to ensure that you are aware of the project, the scope, and we want to come to you timely before we're moving forward with the implementation so that any questions that you may have on the project may be answered. And also wanting to ensure that you are aware that we are being held accountable by the commission as well as others. We have filed a customer education plan, and that throughout this process, we will stay engaged with you. Since filing our biennial plan, which was the first after the approval in 2017, we have filed 2 other biennial plans. The last one was recently filed before the commission. So all of the feeders and all of our planning has been submitted to the commission for review as well as approval. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Yamani, for him to get into more details regarding the project and more specifically, the work that will be executed in Ward 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Good evening, everyone. This is Yamana Kidana. I'm the principal project manager for Pepco for DC Plug initiative. So I'll cover the scope and then also touch on the budget and recovery mechanism of the budget. So as Donna indicated, it's a $500 million project, and 250 million of that is a Pepco portion. 187.5 million is a district portion, and the remaining 62.5 million is also budgeted from the DDOT capital improvement funding. Now, both the Pepco portion and then the district portion are recovered through a surcharge on customer bills. Each of them have a separate line item. So that constitutes the $500 million. It's a multi-year program. Right now, based on the first and second and third biennial plans, we have 20 feeders approved for undergrounding. One of them is already in service. Another 19 at different phases, one in construction, the remaining 18 at different stages. Okay. And as stated earlier, the main focus of this program is resiliency, again, as major storms to improve the reliability of the system. So here we're going to show how we achieve that resiliency by undergrounding the system. So you can see that the existing system is overhead, and then so a green indicates a house that does not have a power outage, and a red indicates a house with seeing an outage. So what happens here, when you see at the middle top of the page, you can see a tree falling and hitting the existing overhead wires. So you can tell that, the entire neighborhood is seeing an outage as a result of this wire seeing an outage. So on the next page, you're going to see the difference as we underground the main lines and the same tree falls. There will not be any impact to majority of the houses. They will remain green, and the reason being is we have undergrounded the lines. But we are keeping the secondaries overhead. The secondaries provide power for a handful of houses. So if a tree hits a secondary, only very few houses will see an outage, so the impact is reduced significantly. So as stated in the video, with the poles are going to remain in place because they will be supporting the secondaries as well as the communication lines. As soon as we are done with undergrounding the lines, we are going to remove the existing overhead line and then also top of the poles to 3 feet above the highest or the top wire level. So that is the scope. With that, I'll pass it on to Keith Fox from DDOT.
Hi, good evening, everybody. As Yamani mentioned, my name is Keith Fox. I am representing the DDOT Program Management Team. I will speak briefly about the design and construction timelines here on this slide. As you can see, our design kicked off in May of 2021. And leading up to tonight's open house, the project has been presented to Councilmember Louis George and to ANC 4A and 4C. In May of 2022, we expect the completion of the PS&E plans, which stands for Plans, Specification, and Estimate. That is the package, the design package that needs to be delivered in order for us to go into construction. Next slide, please. Our construction timeline, it's anticipated that construction will start in the spring of 2023. We expect construction to be 24 months and to complete in the spring of 2025. Excuse me, for clarification, this will be the civil portion of the construction, and I'll speak a little bit to what that is later on in the presentation. And we expect this feeder 15001 to be fully energized in the winter of 2026. Next slide, please. When the construction crews first start the project, you'll see signage go up and you'll see tree protection. Some of these items that I'm about to list here are referencing the scope of work, the tree protection to protect the trees, erosion and sediment control measures will be set up in order to protect the storm drain inlets. All of this you'll see in the immediate work areas. This will be followed by the installation of duct bank, electrical manholes, tap holes, and transformer enclosures. There's a few more pictures on the next slide. I'm sorry, go back, please, Peyton. Roadways will be restored along with the pavement markings that may have been removed during construction. And then once the civil construction is complete, the electrical work will begin. The civil construction, not explained necessarily here, is the construction of the conduits and the manholes. And then later the electrical work will be, or the electrical conduit will be pulled through the system. And then this work will be energized. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this slide shows some of the typical manhole tops that you'll see. This is basically everything underground, and this is what you will see in your neighborhood, which is pretty typical after construction and final restoration. In the upper left-hand corner, you have a transformer enclosure, and you can see it's in the grass space there between the sidewalk and the street curb. And typically that transformer enclosure is about 4 by 6 feet. On the right is a switch manhole, which is much larger and also typically shown or placed in the sidewalk. And again, this is a much larger structure, and this is what it will look like from your perspective in your neighborhood. And then the bottom one is a tap hole, which is much smaller, again, shown in that green space. and that's 3.5 by 3.5 feet. Next slide, please. This slide here shows the general feeder area. We'll move through the next slides rather quickly, but they'll show the proposed locations of the underground duct bank, which will be shown in light blue, and the structures in dark blue. If anyone is interested in taking a closer look at these, we'll be sharing these on the DC Plug info website. You can also reach out by email, which will also be at the end of this presentation, and directly request the information from the DC Plug team. Also, this presentation will be on DDOT's YouTube page. So as you can see, we're working through the neighborhood here. This is near Farragut and the John Lewis Elementary School. This one here is between 16th Street on the west and 13th on the east. You see Emerson and Decatur. Here is, you see 14th Street there in the middle, and that's near the Metro bus garage. And again, these slides will be available for folks to take a closer look at these areas at any time, and you will also be able to contact us directly. On this slide, I want to talk about the maintenance of traffic. And during construction, we will maintain accessibility for residents and keep businesses open. A minimum of 72 hours advance notice is put out through emergency no parking signs that you'll see in your neighborhood. And this will enable us to do our work and will require some temporary parking restrictions. We would adhere to the safe accommodation for pedestrians and bicyclists, which means that if there are bike lanes, we will accommodate. And the public outreach team will be in constant communication, led by Peyton Manning, who you met earlier, and Jam Kendrick, and the rest of their team. And next slide, please. Here is a typical section for maintenance of traffic during construction. The area shown in red there would be like the excavation area, and the work area there would be protected by a traffic drum. Next slide. And again, this is another typical scenario that you might see, and this is without biking lanes. Here is a typical section that you might see when the work is in the middle of the road and the area is protected by traffic drums on each side. And again, another scenario here. And at this point, I'd like to hand it off to Raisha, who will speak about the integrated communication strategy. Raisha?
Thanks, Keith. Okay, so my name is Raisha Quarry. I'm with the public outreach team. Right now, we're in the design phase for this feeder. So in the design phase, you probably already heard Keith mention this, but we have our public outreach team has met with Councilmember Janice Lewis George, met with the MOKers, both ANCs 4A and 4C, as well as hosting this open house. We still have plans to do phone calls as well as sidewalk meetings with the customers that will have the transformer enclosures outside of their homes, on the sidewalk outside of their homes. To ensure proper community engagement, the DC Plug communications team has created a customer education plan for the construction phase of the project. Per that education plan, customers will receive notifications in the form of door knockers, calls, flyers, emails, postcards, quarter signs, etc., at least but not limited to 30 days prior, 14 days prior, and 7 days prior to construction. You can change the slide. Next slide. All right, so to encourage engagement, we have our website that we're launching, a brand new website coming soon. We encourage you guys to email us with any questions, and then we have our project hotline that you can call at any time. And feel free to reach out to us on social media via Pepco and DDOT social media sites. I'm going to pass it off to Jam for questions and answer portion.
Thank you, Raisha. This is Jam Kendrick with the Community Outreach and Engagement team. At this time, I do not see any questions in the chat. If there are any questions, please type your questions into the chat so that the team can address them. You can press *3 if you've dialed in to the meeting.
Just want to make a quick clarification. The Q&A is accessible in the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx window. If it was not open already when you joined, you can select the three-dot icon in the far bottom right and open that up. If you've joined on browser or mobile app, you should be able to tap your screen or see a question mark icon, and that will allow you to access the Q&A. And again, you can raise your hand if you've dialed in directly by pressing *3, or if you've joined us on the WebEx app, you can find the raise hand icon in the participants panel. Or if you're on the mobile app or browser, in more options, the three-dot icon, there should be a raise hand option. And we have one raised hand. I will unmute you now.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Taladin Ukta. I reside at 1373 Jefferson Street, Northwest, right at the corner of 14th and Jefferson. I guess my first question is, in my trying to read the map that was distributed, the map that came with the virtual meeting notice, does feeder 15001, does it affect my home? Oh, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fine.
So I don't know the exact details, and then the answer will be most likely. But so this what's going to happen. So when we do the construction work, residents and customers will not see any outage during construction. So the only time you will see an outage is when we convert the system from the existing overhead to the underground. So there will be a 2 to 4 hours window of outage as we transition the system. But we would definitely, reach out at least 72 hours in advance before we take an outage, make sure that we're in constant communication, that everybody that's going to be impacted knows about it beforehand. And if you have exceptional circumstances, we will make accommodations accordingly.
Okay, the question was not so much about outage. I think my question is, for context, my question is leaning more towards construction.
Yes, can you pull up slide 13 on the screen? I think that's where the gentleman's address is, 14th and Jefferson.
Okay. Yeah, I am right next to the Colorado Avenue bus turnaround. Yeah, so if I'm looking at this map correctly, I'm just below the bus turnaround at 14th and Colorado. That would be my home there. So will construction be going on at this location?
This is Keith. It appears that the construction will be adjacent to your home. Your home will not be directly impacted by the actual construction, but it looks like you may be customer for this feeder for sure. So,
Okay.
but during construction, um, if you look at the light blue lines, that's a pretty good indication of where the excavation will be.
Right. And it actually appears if I'm looking at this light blue line correctly, it actually appears as though that it's not going to come down to my property.
That is
At least
correct.
this particular one I'm looking at.
Right, that's correct. On 14th Street, it's on the opposite side of the roadway. And I apologize, this is James Giddens. I'm also with the PMC team.
Okay.
On 14th Street, it is on the opposite side of the road. And then as
Yes.
far as
Okay.
Jefferson Street, it is a few houses down from your home.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that you would not be impacted by construction.
Right. I understand that. Yes, sir. No, that part I understand. I do have one more question, and I don't know whether this is a part of the conversation that you all are having. But over the last, I don't know, let me just say roughly 5 months, there was some extensive renovation done to the bus turnaround at 14th and Colorado. One of the things that I observed during this entire process is that turnaround is about to be electrified. And according to the conversations I had with both the contractor and someone from Pepco, they are going to bring electric over from a pole directly across the street from the turnaround and run the electricity underground. Is that going to be part of this project, or is that a separate thing between WMATA and Pepco?
Yeah, this is Yamana again. That is going to be a separate project. This project, the construction hasn't started. We're still in the engineering phase.
Okay.
So it's going to be a separate project.
Okay. Is this DC plug thing a part of something that you all, and I don't know whether this particular group was involved at the time, but somewhere in my documents, I have some stuff, I think from back in 2015, when you all, is that about when you all started to inform the public with documents and maps and things where these different feeders were going to come from? Is that part of that?
Again, Imani here. I wasn't there with the program, but as Donna indicated, the DC Plug initiative dates back, 2012, when the task force was established.
Okay.
And then there were multiple meetings, so you probably are right that there were some meetings back then
Okay.
to discuss these.
Okay. Yeah. So I may still have some of them old maps, but that may be that may not be in effect at this particular point, because if I remember from those old maps, this particular feeder was don't quote me on this, but this particular feeder was at that time was to have been second in line, because the material I have kind of broke everything down and gave people an idea when it was going to when they were going to get to their particular area. Lastly, I did not come on until the I'm just going to call her the community liaison. I don't know if that's how you all define it, but I was glad to hear that there were going to be multiple ways in which this is going to get out to the public, because but for the fact that I had someone to leave my building today and hand me what should have been on my at my door, it was actually on a banister downstairs that I just literally received today. And I want you all to know, I mean, I did get it. I'm on the call and it's all good. But I do want you to know that this initial distribution, as I took a walk today and riding through my neighborhood, during the walk, I saw several of these notices on the ground. And in fact, on Ingraham Street in the 1400 block, there was a bunch of them just in the street blowing in the wind. So whoever you all have responsible for the distribution end of these, these notices, keep an eye on them, because they're not doing what I would consider to be a thorough job. So at this point, I mean, I'm going to, I guess there's a website I can visit. If I want more information, I'll do that. And I thank you all for having this meeting and answering my questions.
Yep. Thank you for the opportunity and feedback.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We have a few questions in the Q&A. The first one is from Jim Thomas. He says, will you accommodate parking for individuals with handicapped parking spots in front of our homes? And I'm going to hand this over to Yamani or Keith.
Yeah, this is Keith. We will make every effort, particularly for handicap parking. We'll work with the contractor to try to maintain that parking in front of your home. If not because of construction right there, we will try to accommodate and have the parking available somewhere very close, keeping in mind that that is handicap parking. So the answer to your question is that we will try to accommodate that during construction.
Thank you, Keith. Our next question is from Jeff Stewart. Why not extend the project to include all of Blagden Terrace, not Blagden Avenue?
Yeah. So as stated at the beginning, so the way we have selected the feeders is based on their performance and and then ward equity. So we actually are not going by streets, but based on where the feeder currently is and the portion of that feeder that is recommended to be underground.
Can you go to slide 18 also? The reason why I asked to pull this up, it appears that there's a portion of Blagden Terrace that's also supposed to be underground also.
Thank you,
Okay,
T.
good point.
I appreciate that. Our next question is from John Stenweg. His question is, I support the principle and live in the 1400 block of Decatur Street. Since our power is fed from the alley, how will this benefit residents on my block?
Yeah, so if your block is fed from this specific feeder 15001, you're going to get that resiliency against major storms because we've placed the feeder underground. During major storms, you're not going to see the outage that you would normally see. So that's the main objective of this DC plug power undergrounding project.
Yes, and I think the reference is slide 16 there. You can, I think they're referring to the alley north of Decatur. And as Yamani mentioned, that you'll still see the benefits of the undergrounding program.
Thank you, team. I have another question from Daniel Ball. Can you please clarify, after the completion, will we still have overhead wires for the street to our homes? Thank you.
So the primaries and main lines will be placed underground, but the service lines, basically the ones that connect your home to the first pole outside, will still remain overhead. So yes, there would be an overhead line that'll be left, but it's the secondary line and only supplies a handful of houses.
Okay, thank you, Imani. The next question is from Jay Jones. How long is the design phase?
This is Keith. It's an aggressive 12 months. So we expect to have the final design complete in May of this year.
Thank you. I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A at this point.
Hey, Jam, this is Peyton. I believe there's a hand raised as well. Molly, if you wanted to unmute.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having this meeting. Name is Vanessa Rubio. I am ANC Commissioner for part of this sector. One of the questions I have in reference to your construction phase is, will the digging be taking part on the sidewalks or on the roadways? And will there be steel plates involved for the cover up, as well as how quick do you plan to repave the sidewalks?
This is Keith. The answer to your question is that there will be work in the street. There will also be some work in the sidewalk. And during that construction work, the contractors will have to make safe accommodations for pedestrians and bicyclists on those sidewalks. You asked if we would be using steel plates, and the answer is yes, typically. And if those steel plates, those again will also have to be made with to have safe accommodations. So, they'd be feathered. They would be set up such that there wouldn't be a lot of noise from them. And if they're in any walking or bike path, they should be recessed.
Okay.
Just
Thank
to
you
add
for
a
answering.
comment, all work will be within public space. So just want to make sure that everyone understands that.
Okay. Yeah, that was an part of my question, because public space also includes sidewalk and part of residents' homes. Another question or suggestion that I strongly request for this project is vibration test for each block. I'm having issues with Washington gas line replacements on the 1200 block of Kennedy Street. And this block was strongly affected due to the vibration. When work was being done on the residents' homes as part of public space, whether it was street or sidewalk, the voids in the street just caused too much vibration, where now our residents' homes have cracks and are having structural damage to it. So for this project, which seems to be a similar project to what Washington Gas is doing in our neighborhood, I do have that strong concern as far as the vibration that will cause on each block as you guys are doing your construction.
This is Keith. Thank you. And your comment is noted, and we're looking into that. We're aware.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you guys for all the questions. I just want to give it one more moment to make sure there are no more questions coming in through the Q&A. One more. Okay, so once construction starts, will there be a hotline number to call if things don't go as planned? And the answer is yes. The number that we are providing would be 1-844-758-4146. Again, that number is 1-844-758-4146. And you can call us throughout construction, through design. If you have any questions after this meeting, that's a great way to contact us, as well as the email questions@dcpluginfo.com. Either way is a great way to communicate with us. Again, I'm just going to give it another moment for questions. And if you have any, you can continue to provide them. We do have a brief survey for you guys to fill out. You can access a survey by going to rebrand.ly/dcplugfeeder 15001-comments. If you join from your computer, you'll be automatically redirected to the survey following the meeting. But again, that website is rebrand.ly/dcplugfeeder 15001-comments. And we do have one more question. When will we hear back on the vibration testing?
This is Keith again. I don't have an exact answer for when you'll hear back. We just were made aware that that vibration may be an issue on some of these projects. So when I mentioned that we were aware, it means that we're looking at the situation and trying to find the best solution. And that's the best information I have right now, but I want to assure you that we are looking into that, John. So thank you for the question.
Thank you,
I
Keith.
just want to add to that, our standard construction specifications address vibrations that the contractor has to be mindful of when they do the saw cutting and work on the streets, and they're not going to be exceeding a certain prescribed vibration level that is safe. But to Keith's point, given there's a historic issue in the area, we'll be doing additional study in that specific area.
Thank you, Imani. And again, I just want to give it one more moment for some questions. Don't see any more hands raised. So with that, I'd like to thank you all.
There's a hand raised.
Oh, you see a hand raised?
A call-in user just raised
Okay,
it.
great. Could you unmute them, Molly? That'd be great.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Leonard Phillips. I'm right here in front of the new John L. Lewis School. I was just curious when I heard I got the flyers, sort of like that gentleman said earlier, laying on the ground. And I said, oh, this is something new. And it turns out it was supposed to be stuck in everybody's door. So I went and looked at it, I don't know whether the wind was blowing it or what. But I just have a quick question. I understand that you want to put this virtual, this DC plug is trying to put this power grid underground. Now, my thinking is, what will you have to do in the individual homes in this blocked off area you have here? Will you have to come up and pull the wires off the side of the house, or will they be coming out to the old telephone pole that we're used to, or you just taking the transformers and the main power sources and sticking them underground?
So the wire that comes from your house that goes to the first pole outside will remain in place. So we are only undergrounding the primary line, the laterals, and then we're also putting the transformers and other equipments underground, but we're not touching that last piece of wire from the pole to the houses.
Thank you. That's what I was just curious, because I was thinking you might be, cutting those lines, and then you might have to dig into the ground and run feeders to the house that you can't see and stuff like that. And cable, you might have it and you might not have it, so that would be really inconvenient. So I figured you guys had it kind of like in place, and I kind of thought that's what you do, but I just want to make sure I heard you guys right, that that's what you're going to do. So those lines will be intact, and they're big transformers, which ours have gone out a couple of times in the last 4 or 5 years, and they've come out and promptly, replaced them. So, yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. And it will definitely make us more comfortable when outages, because we've had some freak stuff happen in D.C. in the last 6 or 7 years with, the monster snow, and we've been having, seem like weather changes are causing problems. So I think it'll be a nice thing. I think you guys, if you keep going with it, I think it'll be a nice thing to have, a little more security, and you won't have to wonder whether your lights and stuff are going to do crazy things, So, yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and that was my question.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, now take care.
You too. And we do have another question, wanting to make sure that everybody's aware that there is an underground spring on the west side of 14th Street in the 5400 block. And that's certainly something that we'll take note of. I don't know if Yamani or Keith, you have anything to say to that, but we'll appreciate that feedback and make sure that our design team is taking a look at that as they plan the feeder. Okay. Okay, so the spring leaks onto the street. We'll make sure that our design team is well aware of that. I appreciate that feedback. And again, any other questions or comments you may have, again, we'll give you a few more minutes to get them out now, but at points like that, especially if anything comes to mind, reaching out via the email or the phone number provided before would be a great way to inform the team.
And Peyton, one of the questions says that, from John says, this notice came today, not enough notice. Can you
I
take
see.
a few seconds to talk about
Yeah,
your
of course.
outreach?
I certainly apologize about that. We went out again today. I know I had a team out today putting out notice, but there's been multiple touch points. We had door knockers going out and flyers and signage in the community starting about 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure, sometimes with the wind and whatnot, the notice does get removed from where they leave it. Certainly feedback that we'll take back to the team and make sure that we don't have that issue again. I appreciate that. And I noticed that we had a few comments about that today, so I'll make sure that we have advance notice in the future for everybody. And I don't see any more questions coming through at the moment, so I just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, and I wish you and your families all good health. Oh, we have one more. Yeah, the survey will be larger when you do it online. It won't just be this little tiny box that you see. So when you go to the website, again, rebrand.ly/DC plug feeder 15001-comments, you'll have access to the whole site. But on that note, that should conclude tonight's meeting, and I thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.